Thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm Andy Stanford. I'm here to talk to you today about business process management. I'm a digital business analyst with GOSS. Right, so we're here to talk about business process management. There's a few items on the agenda I'm going to rattle through fairly fast because it's quite a large presentation. But we go through what is BPM, why do it, how does it help you, what does it look like, and just a bit at the end about a couple of tools that we find useful within a BPM environment. And after we finish the webinar, both myself and Pete will be staying around at the end to answer any questions you've got or just to pick anything else up with you. So first up, what's a process? Well, traditionally, work is organised in normal organisational silos. A process tends to cut across all of the elements. So within a normal process, you may well have different departments involved, different systems involved. So it does not sit within a normal organisational structure, which obviously gives you problems along the way. So you may well have customer services, finance, back office, even tip operatives, third-party staff, all playing a role within an end-to-end process. So we're not talking about a process within an organisational silo here, we're talking about the full end-to-end process. So there's a definition there, just taken from Wikipedia, which is a collection of linked tasks which find their end in the delivery of a service or a product to a client. And the real problem that gives you is managers operating in traditional silos don't necessarily have control of the whole end-to-end process. More and more these days with third-party contractors, outsourced contact centres, those sorts of things, you don't necessarily have full control. So, we talked about what a process is, but what's BPM? BPM is made up of a number of stages. The first stage of BPM is about modelling your existing processes, and that's about understanding your current metrics, gathering your demand data, understanding how the process is done right now, and that gives you a strong foundation to start building towards analysis of the process. So that's looking at the value chain, that's looking at failure demand and the sources of it, and starting to bring out where we might be able to improve your processes. And then we move into the third stage of BPM, which is about process design. So it's about taking all that understanding that you've gathered, all the knowledge of the current process, and starting to look to bring in improvements, remove waste and remove failure demand from the system. Fourth stage of that is about process transformation, and that's about actually taking these paper or electronic process diagrams and implementing them. We've talked a little bit already about our BPM tool that enables you to implement processes. There's lots of other systems also. Some document management systems have workflows within them, some CRMs have light workflow within them. The performance management stage, so that's about saying, okay, we've done this exercise, we've gathered the information about the as-is, we've analysed it, we've worked out how we can improve it, we've improved it, we've implemented it, so what happened? Did we achieve those benefits? Did we not? Do the customers like it? Do they not? All of those sorts of things. And BPM is the sum total of all of those 5 elements. So it's about doing all of this process, and it's the culture of continuous improvement. So let's just go a little bit more into those components. So the first stage, process modelling. So that's about doing your as-is process review. It's about defining the customer value, because it's essential that you look at this from the customer perspective. And it's about mapping that process, and it's about gathering the metrics. And it's about understanding demand data, and quite often that's a difficult thing to gather, because sometimes you can get some statistics out of customer services, but whether it gives you enough information can be challenging. I mean, we'd always advocate, if you don't have the right demand data, well, just try doing a bit of sampling, follow about 50 cases through, listen to 50 phone calls, really understand what's going on, really try and understand what the customers are contacting you for, how much of it is value demand, how much of it is failure demand. And it's about defining your value chain, so that's about other tasks, value, non-value, or non-value that we've just got to do. So non-value would just be, rekeying the data. Value work is making a payment, something like that. Non-value but legislative requirement would be something, say you've just got to capture some statistics for the government. You can't get away from it. So it's not adding customer value, but you've got to do it anyway. And it's very important that you capture the time, how long it takes you to do the processes, and your costs, and identifying all the systems that are involved. And through that whole process modelling stage, it's also essential that you have the right team around it, because you need people with knowledge of all of the steps of the processes so that you can accurately map the as-is. When you've got that as-is, you start to move into the analysis phase, and you start to look at the data, model it, cost the processes, understand how much it's really costing you to deliver these, and review the value chain. And the whole idea of this process analysis phase is really identifying the opportunities for improvement within the process. Following that, you move into the process design phase, so you take all that knowledge and you look to eliminate the waste, remove and reduce non-value work, design the processes around customer value, define the new to-be process, define the benefits that are going to be delivered, and start to generate the business case if you need to within this process. And then the last phase is actually process transformation. So it's taking all that knowledge, taking all those maps and implementing them in a system. And very much there we start to move into project management and managing the transition and making sure you communicate with your stakeholders and you implement the new measures. And most importantly, you achieve the benefits. The fifth stage is the performance management stage, and that's really happening all the way through the process. It's a continuous process. It's about analysing the data, analysing the outcomes. It's about getting the customer feedback. We thought we designed it around the customer. How did that work? Did we actually get the benefits we expected? Is the customer using the services more? It's also about monitoring the benefits. We said we would save X. How did we do? Did we do better? Did we do worse? What can we learn? And it's about making sure you've got the good governance around your processes and around your projects. All of these items within the performance management arena can act as a trigger to restart the process and restart looking. So if things start to dip, if things aren't taken up, you move on and start to have a look at the processes again and go back to the start. So, lean systems thinking. This approach is effectively based on lean systems thinking, and it's got some fundamental principles which says design around customer value. So it's understand the process from the customer perspective. I always talk about this as it's a very challenging environment we all work in. We all have government targets to deliver certain things within certain periods of time. But what that actually does is drives the wrong behaviours if you focus on meeting those targets, because people naturally try to meet targets. So it's about understand that customer value, design the process around the customer value, and it's very much look after the pennies and the pounds will look after themselves. Because if you put an efficient process in, if you remove the failure demand, the customer's not ringing you to say, where is it? Why haven't you done it? When are you going to do it? I don't understand the letters. Then you can do things a lot more efficiently. So second thing is identify all steps within the process. Third thing is identify the value within there. the value and the non-value added steps. Fourth thing, redesign it, remove the waste. And what that means is you achieve results. You remove the waste, you remove the failure demand, you improve your processes. And it's a continuous process, it never stops. Unlike other older methodologies like BPR and BPI, they were very much about let's go in, let's do a one-off exercise, let's redesign a process and let's walk away. This is very much about let's go in, let's look at the processes, let's change the mindset within the organisation. So let's let the stakeholders understand what we're doing now is we're looking at how we can best deliver the work, and we're looking to change that mindset. So what are the key building blocks to a BPM project? We need good leadership. Leadership's essential to this. We've already talked about at the very start that a process crosses organisational boundaries. By the nature of performing a process review, you are going to ruffle a few feathers, because you are going to need to change processes, and it's not necessarily going to be in an area that you have direct responsibility over. So you need that leadership. You need someone to go to when you've found the savings and you want to start to implement them. And it's also important that you're making sure that whatever you're doing within the project is aligned to the wider organisational strategic goals. You need to follow a methodology. It's very good to have a methodology. It makes it easy for everybody within the process and the wider stakeholder group to understand what's going to happen, how the project's going to work, what the end game is, and all of the steps within the process. And make sure you've got those stakeholders involved. You will not get a process implemented without making sure you engage the stakeholders all the way through. It's good to have a team with experience. Statistics show that an experienced BPM team can deliver 10 to 30% of quick wins, and that's just through they're used to looking at processes. They spend their time looking at processes. They know where traditionally inefficiencies creep in. We've already talked about it being cross-organisational. Any handoffs between teams in a process is a classic area where either there's going to be duplicate data entry or there's going to be issues around creating waste. Get the right team. I've already talked about it. You need the team to have knowledge of the whole end-to-end process. You cannot perform a review from a back office perspective and ignore the customer services team, or leave out finance even though it's a large part of the process. It just can't be done. You will not get the correct results, so make sure you've got that broad spectrum of people involved. An understanding of the wider organisation. A BPM project can't exist in a bubble. There are other pressures, there are strategic goals, there's a technical architecture that's going to exist in the organisation. You have certain systems, you're not necessarily going to change them, so you need to have an understanding of the organisation that you're operating in and those constraints. And getting the right culture, we've already talked about this. It's a change of mindset. It's not your traditional way of looking at things. You need to have a different view. And getting that culture right in the organisation is often the hardest thing. The people are the hardest things to bring along. But that's all about engaging them. That's all about talking to them. That's all about having that good leadership, because the best BPM projects have the chief executive as the main sponsor, because if they can't get something through and if they can't change the culture, nobody can. Tools and resources. I'm going to talk about a couple of tools later on, but my thoughts always with resources are don't forget the people. Quite often we work with customers, the members of the team that are looking at the review have it as an add-on to their day job, don't really have the time to commit to it. You need to free up those people and give them the time to look at this, because that will reap rewards. You will achieve the benefits, but they need to be given the time and space to do this. And good governance. Around any project, around any program, you need to have the right governance. You will hit walls. You need to be able to know where I go to, how I escalate problems, and where I go to if something goes off track. So, critical success factors. Well, if I were kicking off a BPM project in my organisation, one of the first things I'd want to do is make sure we've got a customer focus. The whole BPM process has to be done from the customer perspective, and it's about getting the right project to get you started. If you want to get traction, if you want to get confidence in the organisation that BPM works and that savings can be achieved, you've got to get the right project. Get something that's important to the organisation, or there's a problem, or it's a high-value customer area, something that's good visibility, something you know you can do well with. But try to avoid something where a solution's already been identified, because a true BPM exercise needs to look at it almost as a blank sheet, not we're implementing a new system, therefore or bend this process into the new system. Don't assume anything. You need to get the data. I talked about it before, it's sometimes very difficult to get the data at the outset. Do some sampling, listen to some calls, get as much data as you can. Because believe you me, when you take your reports at the end of the BPM exercise and you want to start implementing it, your recommendations will be challenged by people within the organisation. So it's really important that you get the data and you can back up what you're saying. One of the key things when you redesign the process as well, if you don't have appropriate amounts of data available within your processes, when you look at the as is, make sure you build it in the 2D process, that you're collecting the data along the way so it becomes easier the next time you look at it. And deliver results. It sounds simple, but get the right project, don't make assumptions, get your customer focus. Deliver those results in the first process, and you'll go from a situation where you're having to batter the door down to get people to want to engage with BPM, to actually people asking for you to come in. And we've seen it with a number of customers where they've done some good work, couple of projects underway, couple of good stories, and all of a sudden everyone wants them to come and get engaged with their service area and their processes. So, okay, what does BPM support? There's lots of different changes that BPM can help you with. BPM is good with intelligent cuts. We all know the public sector and the way the budgets have gone recently. Many years of top slicing of budgets, not necessarily making the intelligent cuts. But we're getting to the areas now where services are going to have to stop, or services are going to fall down because we've had 4 or 5 years of continuous cuts. So you need to make intelligent cuts. You need to change your processes. You need to fundamentally shift the way you do things. So BPM is a good way of doing that. Reorganisations in the organisation, coming from 15 years of a public sector background, I'm well used to the happy Christmas and by the way you might not have a job in April discussion. But if you want to do an reorganisation well, you need to understand what the processes are, you need to understand what the resources required are to do that process. And if you've got regulatory change, it's also a good way to address that. Change the process, remap it, understand the impact that it's going to have. What better way to create a specification and actually really understand your processes and what you need to deliver the customer value. Get that into your specification and deliver it. New initiatives, partnership working. Again, BPM, if you're going to outsource your services, you're going to start drawing up SLAs, you need to understand the impact it has. How much resource it's going to take. If you're going to start working with partners, how do they work with you if they don't know the processes? Let's get them designed, let's redesign them for the new ways of working, and let's achieve those savings. So, how can we help? Well, here at GOSS, we've got a number of services we can help. We've got business analysis services. I've been working with a number of clients to help them look at their processes and redesign them for the digital platform. We've got the digital platform. We have the tools to help you deliver those services online. We've got transformation services around the wider channel shift arena, and we've got channel shift experts. We've got BPM tools to help you. We've got BPM project management services if you need to boost your organization. We offer BPM training on methodology, use of the tools. And we've also got our BPM community where we're hoping to get all of our clients sharing good practice, even sharing projects and sharing expenses to do some integrations. And those services are there to help you accelerate your projects. So what does good BPM look like? Well, a few of you may know this man. It's Dave Brailsford. He effectively came in to create Team Sky from afresh, and no British cyclist ever won the Tour de France. He came in and said, we will win it within 5 years. And how did he do that? Well, he came in, he gave leadership. He was a really good leader. He talked about planning. He had great vision. He had a very clear vision, to be honest, to win the Tour de France within 5 years. He empowered his staff to work on the process. Everybody understood that they were there, no matter who they were within the team, they were there to improve what they did by 1%. And he got the right culture. He empowered the team. He optimized his talent with a dynamic, fun and challenging culture. Sounds beautiful, but it really is the way to do it. And give ownership to the team. Let the people who are doing the things, doing the elements, they're doing the processes, they understand it better. That's why we were talking earlier about the makeup of the team. You need to get the right people in there who understand it, who know it, who do it, and they can help you improve. So how did they do that? Well, they looked at everything. I mean, they even talked about the best way to wash your hands to avoid infections, because if you avoid infections, you can train better. If you train better, you've got 1% better energy when you're in the races. They talked about bring the cushion, bring the pillow that best suits you, because you get a better night's sleep, you're going to perform better. The best massage gel, the best warm-ups, the best bikes, the best cars. It's a very small photo, that one, but it is actually a very awesome, the way they actually packed their cars. Again, it was all about delivering that ultimate performance. So the cars are there to support the riders, they give them food, they fix the bikes when they go wrong. The car was laid out with hundreds and hundreds of items in the most efficient way, because if a bike breaks down, the rider's got to make his way back to the pack. He's got to expend energy to do that. So the quicker the bike's fixed, the less energy he's got to expend. They also had high altitude training camps, something that was different from all the teams. They had the best bikes and mechanics stations, and then the ultimate team bus. And everything they did was about every element of what they do. Improve it by 1% and you will make a massive improvement to your service delivery. And what did it mean? Well, he was wrong. I mean, they didn't win the Tour de France once within 5 years. They won it twice within 4 years, and with two different British riders, or at least semi-British for one of them. So, again, we talked about this earlier. It's about thinking different. It's not the traditional management silos. It's not the traditional way of looking at our work. What are our government targets? How do we deliver them? It's about thinking about the customer and thinking about the new age and how we take best advantage of all the tools that are at our disposal now. So, getting into tools, we have a BPM analysis tool we use, So what this enables us to do, you can map your as-is process and map your to-be process. And then you're also actually having a look here. I'm going into the mapping. So you can see against each stage of the process, I'm allocating a type of action. I'm allocating a role to that action. I'm allocating a break time. A break time is effectively how long does it wait in a queue before someone performs that action. I haven't necessarily got the best example there because I haven't populated break time. But there's a fixed cost attached to it. So if you're sending a letter or doing some printing, you can put a fixed cost against each step of the process. And you can put a processing time. You're also classifying each action as you go through the process. You're classifying each action as value, non-value, or non-value, but we've got to do it, which is the yellow one in the middle. And you can also attribute a system. So you have multiple systems, you have multiple processes, you have multiple roles. All of the roles and the systems you can attribute costs to, which then enables you to actually start to look on the right there, over here. I've mapped the end-to-end process. I can then evaluate it. So I can see here that in total in this process, there's 27 days of break time in the process. So 27 days, this particular thing, which is a council tax single person discount, sits in queues or waits for people to pick it up. Predominantly that's made up of a 20-day delay before a council tax officer is picking up the piece of work. But you can see on average through the process that's it. On average through the process there's a fixed cost of 73p. That's made up of printing and postage. And on average in the process it takes 37 minutes of processing time. So that's telling me that really to deliver it, although it's taking 27 days, it's only 37 minutes of real work on any systems that's done by the officers. The rest of it is a lot of wait time. And the total cost of that process is 1038. So that's the variable cost, which is the staff, with the fixed cost on top, which tends to be printing and postage cost. So once I've mapped the as-is, that gives me a really powerful tool to be able to talk about how much the process is costing us. I've got it mapped there, I can agree it with the business, and I can then move into the next stage of remodeling it. After I've remodeled the process and made the changes, I'm then able to look at the two in a compare and contrast way. So I've taken both processes, I've got all of the costs against it, I'm then able to demonstrate that by making the changes we can save, in this particular example you can see that the processing time, I'm reducing it by 37%. In this particular example we're only making simple changes that basically improve integration slightly by importing council tax numbers into your website so that all of the web forms that are done are validated against the council tax reference, which means they can be automatically imported. So it's quite a simple change with quite a low cost, but it's effectively demonstrating huge reductions in processing time, huge reductions in break time, and most importantly across the board it's showing that my costs are reducing. My variable costs have gone down by 43%. So if you look at this, with the customer in question, they were actually processing 10,000 of these a year. Quite a lot of them were being turned down, but there was 10,000 being processed a year. Originally it was costing just over 100,000, 103,000, and after re-engineering it's going to cost 60,000. When we actually looked at the cost of making the changes to the system and improving the processes in the system, it was roughly a 16,000 one-off cost and a 10,000 recurring cost. So you can see quite easily we're able to demonstrate that there's a good business case to make that change. So Next tool that I want to talk about, that's the analysis tool, so that's not implementing the process. The next tool that I'm wanting to talk about is our BPM tool. So a few of you may have already seen this. This is Derek and Doris. Derek and Doris are our favourite pensioners. They're sitting at home with their iPad and they're doing a bulky waste process. So this is using the ICM system, the digital platform. They register the bulky waste, do it on their iPad, and it's a nice automated process through there. They fill in a form at the outset, they make a payment. If the council needs further information, it goes back to them, they get an email, they get automatic emails all the way through the process as and when it's approved, as and when it's allocated, as and when it's scheduled, and as and when it's finished. And I just wanted to show you quickly the tool that sits behind that. So this is our free BPM tool that you can get. So behind that bulky waste process is a process map that's drawn within our BPMN tool, which enables us to then implement the process on our website using the GOSS digital platform. So looking at the process, it's quite simple. It starts here at the circle, that's the start of the process. If I just click outside, you can see the name of the process there, and you can also see, for again, the users of our system, within there you have two options as to who can start this process. So it's relating back to the ICM security groups. You can either put a list of users in there or an individual user, or you can put groups in there. So within this particular one, we've put the ICM security group of user, so anybody who is in that group can start this process. And the first step of the process is that it sends an acknowledgement email. So within here, you can see that in the to field, I'm not actually populating that in the process map. So within the to field, I'm just using the form underscore email, so that's taking the email field out of the form, and I've got the email all done there. So what that means is the process starts, automatically the acknowledgement email is sent, no one needs to touch it at all, and it then starts to move on down the process. So within the process, this is actually a sub-process because there's an element in here that a user can cancel up until a certain point, so we've got a sub-process around it so that you can do that cancellation. So within the sub-process, again, the sub-process starts at the circle. First action is a user action. You can see there that I've got a signee there. That's the person that can do this, or the group that can do this. I've also got a form key within there, and this is the form that will be presented to the person within your website as and when it gets to this stage of the process. So what that's actually doing is it presents a form that says, here is the application, is there enough there for you to do it? If not, you say I want more information, and then fill in a box, and that goes back around this loop. And if it is enough, then we continue on down the process and we start to schedule it, send an automatic confirmation email again, and then it moves on into the stage of getting the waste collected. So really, simple process, enabled on the website. It's not touching any other system other than making a payment for this process, and it's all enabled through this free tool. And this free tool is not just a mapping tool, but it enables you within the GOSS digital platform to actually implement your processes. So just quickly to show you a little bit of functionality with it. It's very, very simple to use. If you want to drop a user task on there, you just drag it across, name it, drop in the assignee, form key, so the name of the ICM form that you're going to use. In order to join them up, I'm just dragging and dropping that. If I then want to send an email, again, same again, nice and easy, draw it on there, name it, and then start to fill it up with whatever you want to say in the email and using the emails from the forms. And then when you get to the end of the process, so if you wanted, actually just quickly, if you wanted to split the process depending on what's happened here, you could then create a gateway, draw that on, and have two different events happening. So you could have a user task one way and a mail task the other, depending on what the outcome of this particular one is. So just a whistle-stop tour. Obviously you can do all the nice things about making it look nice, lining it up, for all those a bit more OCD out there than me. And there you have it, a nice process. All I need to do is create an endpoint, populate the various fields, and I'm away. And that's enabling me to do a process. Quite a few of you were talking about specific BPM training. So just to talk you through what we offer, we're offering the process mapping training in basically how to use the tool. Obviously I showed you for about 2 or 3 minutes there. It's about getting into the detail and how do you do that and how do you tie it up to the forms and the process engine. BPM training in general about the methodology, then starting to get a bit more technical, BPM for developers, so when you guys want to start to move on with those forms and processes and really start to accelerate, start to connect to other systems and do some of the far more technical stuff. Another course we offer is the BPM Bespoke Process Developer. So if you have a process that you want to implement, if you let us have that, then we can design the training day around building one of your actual processes. It's actually a 2-day course. So building your actual processes, delivering the training in BPM at the same time as building a real process, which you find is a really powerful way of getting it across, because sometimes just looking at examples isn't the best way to learn something. The BPM methodology, and there's also a forms and BPM specialist, so you need forms knowledge in there, but it's combining forms and BPM together in a course. The other element that we talked about, BPM Analysis Tool. If you want to go to the website, contact us if you want any further information about using that analysis tool, about building your business case, and about really being able to do some more detailed analysis of your end-to-end processes, because obviously not all of the process is going to be conducted online or in the ICM system. It might be in any number of systems across the way. And finally, for those of you who haven't already got it, please go to the website, get the free BPM tool, start to use it, start to work with it, and start to use it on the digital platform. And please get in contact if you need any further information about that.